So this is going to be a project video, but it's not going to be a typical cut a piece of wood kind of project. And that's because we're going to make this. This is what's commonly called inlay. More accurately, it's marquetry. I'll explain all that. It's really not that hard if you follow some of the tips I'll include here. And if you put this on a relatively cheap project, it suddenly becomes a lot more valuable. So with that, let's get started. Hey, it's Steve and welcome back. We're going to jump right into this project, but I want to start with a very quick history lesson on marquetry, because marquetry is a type of inlay, but very specifically it uses thin pieces of wood, so think veneer, and it dates back to the early Egyptians, so 350 BC, and it's been used ever since. I popped up an image here from a piece of furniture from the Louis XIV era. We're talking late 1600s, early 1700s, and you can see the intricate pattern that they've created here. It's amazing. Now keep in mind, when this was built, there were no lasers, there were no X-Acto knives. I have no idea how they created these things, because this must have taken hundreds of hours to make. And it's no wonder that you had to be King Louis to afford one of these. Flash forward to today, we're going to take a lot less time and it's going to be a lot less money to create one of these, because we're going to use a diode laser, and any diode laser will work, even a 5-watt diode laser. And we'll take it, we'll cut out that hummingbird I showed you at the beginning, and I'll show you how to put it all together. There's a few tricks and tips I can give you here during the video, and you'll find out that this is actually really easy if you use some of those. And in the end, you can take this and you can apply it to some of your existing projects and really add value. So here's the design we're going for. It's just a wireframe of a hummingbird. Now, fair warning, this image is just something I pulled off of Google Images, so it's probably got a copyright. I would say, while I'm going to share this to you, do not use this in any kind of commercial product or you're going to get sued. So keep that in mind. Now, I did make some modifications to this. I widened out the gaps between some of the shapes, and then I colorized it because I wanted to kind of get a look at how I wanted this to finish up. Now, before we get rolling here, you're going to need a few materials. You're going to need some glue. You're going to need some kind of backer board, and in my case, I used 1/4-inch plywood. And you're going to need an ample supply of veneer. Now, the veneer could be different kinds of wood. If you want dark wood for dark things in your image, and lighter wood for you know, the chest of a hummingbird, you can certainly do that. I only had birch veneer right here, right now, so that's what I chose. And instead of trying to find some colors of wood that suited, I wanted my hummingbird to be fairly realistic, so I painted pieces of it red and green. And then I stained some of it gray and the beak and the eye black. So I came out with a hummingbird that's kind of neat. You can do pretty much anything you want here though, so keep that in mind. You're also going to need some transfer film, and I'll put links to all of this stuff down below if you're interested. But you can normally find a lot of this stuff at your local hardware store, so keep that in mind. Now, as far as materials go, I took my veneer and I stained the things that need to be stained. In this case, it's the gray that I'm going to use for his chest. And then I also wanted the throat to be red, so I took a piece of veneer and I spray painted it red. And I continued on with green and then some of the browns for some of the feathers. So now that my material is prepped and I'm just waiting for it to dry, I loaded my image into Lightburn. And I've created 2 layers here. One is the outline layer and one is the actual bird. You don't have to do it this way, but it's just easier because the outline gets cut once, and we'll get different pieces cut for the bird. All those individual shapes will get cut out of different colors of material. But for now, I'm going to cut this out pretty much the way it is. This is effectively the stencil that all those pieces go into. And here I'll show you a little bit of the actual cut of the outline in real time. Keep in mind, this is an Xtool S1 40-watt laser, but realistically, even if you have a 5-watt laser, you're going to be able to cut this veneer material really quickly. So don't assume that because you have a 5-watt laser, this is going to take hours. This is a really quick operation. When I'm ready to cut out the individual pieces of the bird, what I did was create a 3rd layer, this green layer. And it has the same power and speed settings as previous cuts, but what I've done is I've added this kerf value of 0.04, which is roughly half the thickness of the spot size. And that's because when you cut a line, half of the spot size is on each side of the center of that line. And what this allows me to do is make the pieces the right size when I put them into the template. It makes them slightly larger. Now we're ready to cut out those individual pieces on the laser, and I'll give you the first of a couple of tips here. And that is to take the material and lay it down on a piece of acrylic, clear acrylic specifically, and then tape it down, because this material, once it gets warm, especially if it's got a coating like paint on it, it will start to curl, and you want to make sure that it stays as flat as possible for as long as possible. So after that, I just shoved it into the laser and I cut out the piece. Everything's cut, so we can start assembling here. So we'll take the background, the template, and we'll pull that off and set it aside for a second, and you can see it's basically the shape we want. Then I'm going to take a piece of this transfer film, and if you're a vinyl cutter user, you know exactly what this stuff is, but it happens to be convenient here. So we can lay down our background, and I'm laying it face down, so we're basically building this backwards. And now I have all of the pieces I cut, and I'll start with the beak, and I'll just drop it in there and continue on with the rest of the pieces, the throat and so on. And you can see as it comes together here, it's starting to look like a board again, but it's all face down. I'll drop the last piece in here, and now we're ready. I'll just give it a little roll. I'm actually using my glue roller for this. And then I'll flip it over, and I'll spread a bunch of glue on it and mount it on the backer board. Again, this is just a 1/4 inch piece of plywood, and I'll sandwich it with another one. And when I'm ready to clamp it all down, I just start putting clamps on, and you keep putting clamps on until it looks like this, and then you go away for an hour or so and come back and it'll be finished. Now it's time for the big reveal. All the clamps are off. I'll separate the two boards, and all I just have to do is pull off the transfer tape, and there's the bird. So the only thing left to do here is run it through a saw and cut it out square and cut it to size. And that's the project. Now, I was inspired to do this because in the last Shop Talk live stream I did a week ago, and we do these every Friday night, by the way, so feel free to join. Somebody mentioned that they didn't think a laser was a woodworking tool. Well, here's an example where you're doing a very ancient woodworking function, but you're using a modern laser as a tool to make that happen. So keep that in mind. A laser's not just for cutting coasters. It can be a tool in your shop, and think of it that way, and you'll find out that you have a lot more use for it. Anyway, we'll wind down, so get out there, make your world, and I'll see you next time.